false fire? Last week, my mom and I were driving through a familiar stretch of our neighborhood on our usual trip to the local shops. As we turned a corner, I noticed thick black smoke billowing into the sky up ahead. Curious and concerned, my mom took a detour down a side street to find the source. That's when we saw it, a two-story house ablaze. Bright red flames poured from the roof and top-story window, cutting through the smoke. There were no firefighters on the scene yet. From our very clear vantage point, we could see the neighbor in the adjacent single-story home stepping outside, clearly alarmed, and I noted that there was a large gap between the two homes. The flames would have had to leap an improbable distance to reach the smaller house, and it was not a windy day. We made sure emergency services were on their way, and as we drove off, we heard sirens approaching. Later that night, the news ran a segment about the fire, but what caught us off guard was the report. It claimed the single-story house had been completely destroyed, with no mention of the two-story home. According to the report, only one house had burned, and it wasn't the one we saw engulfed in flames. Yesterday, while driving to the shops again, we decided to pass by the site ourselves. What we saw left us stunned. The single-story home was a charred, gutted shell, just as the news had reported. But the two-story house was perfectly intact, the roof untouched. The windows that had flames spewing out of them merely days before still had their blinds drawn neatly behind the glass. Second daughter disappeared. So I have a second cousin who has been married to his wife for about 20 years. About 7 years ago, I went to a family reunion that he, his wife, and their 2 daughters were at. At one point, I was watching all of the kids, including my own. His daughters' names were Hannah and Haley. I spent time with those girls. I took them fishing. My daughter remembers both of them because she was the older cousin. About 2 years later, I saw a post on Facebook that they had taken Hannah to Disney World. I was confused because I was like, where is Haley? I have seen and have taken pictures of her. My daughter remembers her. They posted lots of other posts where they were doing stuff with Hannah. So naturally, I asked about Haley, and they both stated that they did not have a daughter named Haley. I remember having a conversation with my cousin's wife about the spelling of their daughter's name. So I went back into my Google Photos to see if I could find pictures of Haley, and she was not there. My daughter had pictures of her in her phone as well, and she was freaked out because they were gone. Like the pictures were still there, but Haley was not in them. No one else in the family remembers her, even though some of the pictures were of aunts, uncles, and cousins with her. It's like somebody photoshopped her out of all the pictures. I am so confused, like what happened to her? How does this child not exist that I remember fishing with? I even asked multiple family members if they knew any child named Haley, because I thought, well, maybe she was somebody else's kid. No one knows who she is, and even my mom states that she does not remember that name. What the hell? To answer some questions, I noticed this about 5 years ago. I did do a deep dive into it. I Googled things and people involved. I found other girls with the same name, but none of them were her. I went through old photos. I was convinced something had happened to her, and no one wanted to talk about it. I asked so many other cousins, uncles, aunts, and Haley's grandparents. My daughter had taken a bunch of selfies with her cousins as they had camped out a couple of nights in the same tent. She was gone from all the pictures, even the one I had of her and my great aunt of just the 2 of them. My daughter was 14 at the time. My son was 11, and he doesn't remember Haley either. The girl's dad does in fact boil fish. My cousin's wife did have multiple miscarriages after Hannah, and that's why she said they only have the one child. Maybe she was a ghost?
Parking garage. This happened when I was visiting my friend in Savannah, Georgia. We drove downtown and parked in a small parking garage so we could walk around. It wasn't an elaborate garage to get lost in. It had 7 floors, where the 7th was rooftop parking. We parked in a left-hand space where level 6 turned into 7, meaning we parked where half above us was the ceiling and the other half was the sky. We headed downstairs onto the common streets of the city, went to a restaurant, a candy store, did sightseeing, and window shopping for a couple of hours. Around dusk, both of our phones died. We didn't want the night to end yet. Plus, I wanted to take more pictures of downtown, so we headed back to the parking garage to charge them. We took the stairs up. We got to the car, plugged our phones in the charging port to gain just enough battery life, waited like 10 minutes, then returned for a couple more hours of strolling around the area. When we decided to call it a night, we took the elevator up to the 6th floor, and once we walked to the only space in the garage that was halfway in the garage and halfway outside, my friend's car wasn't there. Instead, there was a whole different row of cars than before. No empty spaces. Bewildered, we thought, there's no other parking space in the garage we could have parked. Did we get towed? Not knowing what to do, we returned to the elevator, went down to the ground floor, stepped out, and just stood there for a moment. I think then it began to sink in how strange this was. My friend oddly kind of felt angry because there was no room for making a human error in this situation. We were sober and alert. We definitely were at the same parking garage. There is only one part of a garage where it's halfway in and the other half outside. This wasn't a we must have parked on the wrong floor situation. Like I said, it was a small garage. There was no other elevator or section of the garage. Not being able to make sense of it, after about 2 minutes, we got back into the elevator up to the 6th floor. As we did before, we went to that same exact spot. Then lo and behold, his car was there again. As the night continued, and days since, my friend and I have combed through that strange experience to debunk it. There was no way to make sense of it. Just thinking of it gives me chills. Another friend asked, was this a Ferris Bueller type situation? And I laughed a bit, but all spaces in the garage were occupied, and my friend's car was missing only for a few minutes. I've had moments that seemed off and eerie in my life that didn't make sense, but I would shrug it off as a misjudgment of my own. This, however, was clear as day. It didn't make sense. I journaled it down the next day to avoid a mandala affect. I learned more about the history there, and it's ugly. Thousands of horror stories of suffering, torture, terror, and oppression. I pray these souls find peace and light. Timeslip I experienced many years ago. Never told this story before, but I've been thinking a lot about it recently and wondered if anyone else had similar. It started when I was a lad. I was sat on a bus going down a hill on my way home from a friend's house. I looked out the window to my right and shockingly saw me, but older, walking up the hill. For a second we both stopped and looked directly at each other, and then gone. For the next few weeks, I thought about this and wondered if I saw a look-alike or did I imagine it. I couldn't make sense of it at all. About 10 years later, I found myself walking up the same hill, and as I saw a bus coming down the hill, I knew what was coming. I saw my younger self on the bus as it passed me, and in a second, the bus had vanished. At least I now know what I saw was real, but why? And how could this be possible? I've been back to the place many times to see if anything triggers. Sadly, it does not. Hollywood sign vanished after my cousin's death timeline glitch. I had a crazy experience last month after my cousin, who worked in Hollywood for 25 plus years, passed away. I'm hoping someone out there can help me make sense of it. There's a hill I hike in Los Angeles where you can see the Hollywood sign. The day after my cousin died, I hiked up there listening to his playlist his wife sent me that he listened to in his final days. I was grieving, reflecting on our childhood, and decided to say some words to him while viewing the sign. But when I got to the top, the Hollywood sign was gone. Like really gone. I couldn't believe the timing. I assumed it was down for renovations, but I took photos and videos and even asked another hiker if I was losing it. She confirmed she didn't see it either. It was a clear, normal LA afternoon, no clouds, no sign. I texted a few people joking that he took it with him. Walking down the hill, I couldn't help but think, what are the chances that iconic sign is getting a makeover the same day my cousin dies? So weird. When I got home, I searched Google, asked AI, checked X, local news, nothing about the sign being removed or renovated. 3 days later, I did the same hike again. Same time of day, same clear weather. The sign was back, untouched, not one crane in sight. I can't wrap my head around it. Glitch? Timeline jump? A sign from my cousin. That'd be a pretty big stunt to pull off less than 24 hours after passing, but he was an epic human. What do you think? I have photos, videos, can share on Imgur if mods allow. Also, had anyone else had a glitch tied to a loved one's passing?